podcast time, baby. Featuring Erin Stoll. All right, everybody, welcome back again to the Mike Tech Studios podcast. This is Michael Midnight, continuing on our mini-series here for recruiting and staffing with a very special guest today, Erin Stoll. Erin is a technical recruiter. She also has a bachelor's in business admin from the University of Akron. Erin, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I think we were talking about the weather earlier prior to the recording. I'm enjoying my shorts and beautiful weather in this cold time of the year, but you know what? I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you asking.
You have to rub it in.
You know what? I do. I'm that type of person that when it is, 12 degrees out, I'm
35 here and freezing cold. So thanks for that.
I'm sorry. Moving on to hopefully happier topics. I always like to ask a lot of our recruiters and guests that I have on just what is it really about recruiting that made them want to get into the field in the first place? So
I actually came from IT. So I had many years, 13 roughly, and I decided to stay home with my daughter. So for 3 years, I was at home with her, and then it was time for me to go back to work into the IT world and was not having any luck because I was off of work for so long. Employers see that I was off for 3 years, so they think, I'm not keeping up with technology, and they don't know that I had been. So I kind of had a rough time there getting back into the workplace after being off for so long. I actually came across a recruiting company called iFuse Solutions and was working with them to try to get back to work. And the recruiter that I was working with was absolutely amazing. And I had had bad experiences previous to that with other recruiting agencies. Something about...
Not you.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some pretty interesting experiences before I found iFuse, but the recruiter that I was working with was absolutely incredible, trying to get me back to work. She finally said to me one day, "Have you ever thought about IT recruiting? You have such a bubbly personality. You seem to like to network. You really seem like you'd be really good at this because you know how to talk to IT people since you have the IT background. Have you ever thought about it?" So that's kind of how I fell into it. Networking alone is probably one of my most favorite things about recruiting, and that's kind of what drew me to it, and the rest is history. So I absolutely love it, and I'm very passionate about it. I'm passionate about helping people really want to be a part of their success. So that's another thing that kind of drew me to recruiting.
A lot of the people that I do have on this series with the podcast, they're not necessarily superstars that you would see in a movie somewhere or crazy amount of fame to them. What they are best at, and once you get a chance to actually talk to them, you can just feel the energy about them that they do want to make a difference and want to change. And that's just really cool. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I did reach out to you as well. The interesting thing, though, about switching industries and being out, for so long as you had, actually is a good point to bring up, which leads me into my next question. With your background changing as it has, going from previous other industries to what you do now, recruiting, and being out of work for an extended period of time, what can you maybe mention that helps you while you were switching over professions, or what you did gain or what you did learn from having to go through those transitions to be where you are now?
That's a really good question. Being out of the workforce for so long, it is important to continue and further your education, even if you're not working. I had really nothing to show for it. I was reading articles, listening to podcasts, things like that. But I was off stayed home with my daughter, but I also focused on networking through my music. So I kept in contact with professionals. Even though I wasn't working, I was able to focus on my music.
Gotcha. And that really got you through for the networking process and being able to really turn that into what your career and direction is right now, which is recruiting, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. You have a very intense passion for obviously doing something rather artistic that you wouldn't necessarily normally hear a recruiter doing. I know we kind of already sort of introed into it, but do you care to share?
Sure. So singing is my passion, country music specifically, kind of fell in love with it. I've been in rock bands off and on throughout the last however many years, and I kind of just fell into the country music scene, and very passionate about music, very passionate about really moving people with my music and with singing. So I kind of just fell into it, and it's just been something I've been in love with ever since I was a little girl.
That's very cool. I don't know if I could see you being in a rock band and then having to go into your office and like, yeah, I need to apply for a job as an IT tech. I don't know if I can make that connection. That would be interesting though.
Yeah, I don't really look like I'm a rocker. I'm more of a country singer with I would say a closet rocker. Does that work? Does that sound?
That sounds so wrong.
It does.
So, but okay, so music. So obviously you've been really passionate about your music, and that's something that has really driven you into, I mean, essentially what you do now, if you think about it, you're networking. Do you use your music in any way to, I don't want to say help recruit, but I mean, do you use any sort of stories or tactics or anything like that from your experience with singing and things like that?
With my music, honestly, no, not at this point. Other than candidates can see on my LinkedIn profile that I am a Nashville singer-songwriter. And that does kind of attract them to me because I'm showing this a side of me that, I want them to know who I am. So I think I kind of earn that trust possibly. Sometimes people do want to talk to me because they notice, hey, she's a singer-songwriter. Is she a performer? I think that maybe that might be more inviting to them, and I could be easier to talk to.
Well, you would hope so. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, again, I think recruiters, they're just known for not getting back to people. They complain about candidates ghosting on them. I think it's really been more of the other way around. At least that's just been my experience as a candidate. When you do hear certain things about a passion of somebody as a recruiter, I don't know, I would say hope. I know it sounds really kind of sad, but when you're out of work or you're looking for work, you start to get really stressed out. I mean, the first thing is mental fatigue and mental health. It can get to you. Basically, when you can reach out to them and know that they're listening, that authenticity, I think that's very valuable. And it's something that really is missing, I feel, just in my personal experiences with recruiters. A lot of people want to say that, hey, this is what they want to do, but do they actually follow through on it? It's kind of difficult to ghost your fans, especially being, a songwriter and a performer yourself. These are essentially the people that make it possible for you to appreciate doing what you do, because otherwise anybody could sing anywhere,
Absolutely. I do have a passion for changing recruiting because I was on that other side and I had horrible experiences and I had recruiters that would go dark on me and wouldn't keep me in the loop. And I've been there, so I feel for the candidates. And because I'm so passionate about people and about helping people, just from my previous experiences, I gained that passion to want to change recruiting and really make it better for the candidates and make it better for recruiters too, because a lot of us have a very bad rap who don't have all those bad habits, who stay in contact, who truly want to help people find work. So if I can at least be a voice of change and actually do what I say I'm going to do, then hopefully I can help.
Well, I think that's the whole point of actually doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just the marketing about it, but we all get bummed out when we get something that's not as described. How many times have you bought something and then you realize this crap doesn't work, You just get really frustrated. So if you can have those people that actually help just optimize that process, it's good for everybody. And that's essentially why I'm doing these podcasts. It's a win-win for everybody. If it's a better experience for the candidate, it's a better experience for the recruiter. And then the whole process just gets sped up and it's just much more optimized. It's really awesome just to hear how passionate some people can be about their jobs and how they really just don't take it for granted. I really do appreciate Erin being a guest on the podcast, and we're very much looking forward to her part 2 next week. Bonus. Anyone who is listening to the podcast and is interested or in need of a position or IT help or placement that Erin is available for with iFuse Solutions, we've actually set up a special raffle of sorts for listeners of the podcast. So here's how it works. You connect with Erin on LinkedIn, letting her know that you've heard our podcast together. Also, look for Mike Tech Studios on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. If you haven't subscribed or followed or shared our content recently, feel free to do that too. Using the hashtag #TheSingingRecruiter, send us at Mike Tech Studios a screenshot of this podcast and your horror or success story with a recruiter. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a great prize directly from Erin. 2 random winners will receive her latest album as a download code from iTunes. 2 random winners will receive an autograph signed by Erin herself, along with a download code for 1 song off of her latest album. And an even luckier winner as a grand prize of sorts will get both an autograph as well as Erin's latest album, Unfinished. Have your own recruiter candidate story that you want to share with us? If you're listening on YouTube, comment below. If you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, or your podcast app of choice, feel free to email your experience to go@miketech.tv. You can also find our full conversation of this episode on YouTube at youtube.com/Mike Tech Studios. That's MIKTEK Studios. Thanks for checking out this episode, and feel free to like, subscribe, and share our content. Now, if you could all excuse me, I have a plane to catch. I have a country concert to go attend and an artist to go support. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is Michael Midnight signing off.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please, on behalf of the flight crew, this is Michael Midnight, your captain speaking. Let me welcome you aboard the Mike Tech Studios podcast, headed to our next episode with Erin Stoll. We should be touching down in on around what drives you and your passions about what you love to do in local time. And that's, of course, depending on this oncoming headwind approaching, and that's assuming I decide to actually land at our destination. I've been meaning to take a vacation in Hawaii. It's just looking pretty damn good right now. Folks, we just hit our cruising altitude of 11,000 feet, and I have turned off the seatbelt light, which means you are now free to move about this intro as you need be. However, for your own safety, please fasten it when you are seated, in case we encounter any unexpected turbulence, commercial breaks, Battlezords, Godzilla, or my ex's ego.
Don't say Godzilla, we're gonna get sued!
We now return you to your in-flight entertainment. Thank you for choosing the Mike Tech Studios podcast, and you have yourself a good day.
What has worked best for you as far as for networking? What's been your experiences, the best way to network and, for people to really get to know who you are and to stand out in that manner?
Probably through social media, honestly.
Really?
Social media is everything.
What would really stand out in your mind, when you did see this type of activity for a potential, employee or this candidate trying to get your attention? What would work for you?
That's a really good question.
That's when you have to think about it. That's when somebody says, this is a really good question you got.
That is, yeah.
If I was a candidate and you were an owner and you were looking to have somebody stand out, let's say, obviously you do IT. So let's say you want somebody, you obviously want people that are not just necessarily good at what they do, but you want them to be a good fit.
Someone that actually shows genuine interest in my company, that not only sends a connection request to me, but someone that actually takes the time to craft a message that actually would hit on the company culture and that they are truly interested.
Interesting. Now, would you take somebody seriously who maybe went through your website and spell checked something, pointed out a couple of things that could be done better, or maybe made a suggestion in a cover letter or an intro conversation? Or do you think that maybe might not be a good idea?
That would be a terrible idea.
And why would you say that?
If the candidate messaged me with corrections on my website.
That would upset you as an employer?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. I've actually gotten interviews that way, believe it or not. So that's why I was
Really?
asking.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I guess I could say it depends. It depends on the client.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the industry as well. Like I said, for my background, doing design work and marketing and things like that, it is about attention to detail. So if I'm looking at somebody's website or they just posted a couple of articles and very obvious errors, I'm not sure if the owner of the company or the hiring manager has checked or knows about this. So I have, again, this is just on the consultant side of me, thinking, is I look at it and then I say to them, hey, listen, I've noticed this. This is what I do. Based on my experience, you might want to take a look at X, Y, and Z. And just having that conversation, maybe not initially reaching out to them and saying, cold, like a cold message on LinkedIn and saying, hey,
yeah,
your website sucks. Fix this. Love me. Like, I wouldn't do that. But I think that there would be a time and place to be able to mention those types of things, especially in an interview and things like that.
Absolutely. I think right off the bat, no. That would probably put a bad taste in the employer's mouth. But if you had already established some sort of relationship or in an interview, I think that would be okay.
That makes sense. That's fair enough. I like to sometimes play both sides of the table. You know what I mean? Just to make
yes.
sure. So with the IT recruiting, what is like the biggest headache that you have when you're vetting new candidates and trying to make sure that they know what they know as far as whether their background or their coding? Like, what's some of the hurdles that you've come up with, in the process?
Vetting is always fun. One of the best parts about recruiting. But I've ran into candidates that give me these resumes that look amazing. They've got all these skills and you think they're just so incredibly good and solid for the role. And you talk to them and they can't elaborate on their skills. That is very frustrating. So I would recommend, if you don't have the skills, if you don't have anything to back up what you're putting on paper, don't put it on the resume.
Agreed. Now, would that be
frustrating?
No, I agree. And especially when you are hiring somebody specifically for that skill set, and then you realize they just slightly mention that, and that's not really something that they're into or, have full senior knowledge of. When you see these experiences, is it something where maybe just the potential candidate is a little socially awkward about speaking about it, or they just flat out they don't know what they're talking about at all, or they're not familiar with it at all?
It goes both ways. They can be socially awkward or they know nothing.
Yeesh.
And then, of course, you have the purple squirrel that you're looking for, which is always amazing.
But very difficult to come along by. So.
It is.
With all the craziness that's been going on with the country recently, if there was somebody from the recent generation who wasn't born here, but, they saw what you did, they looked up to you, they really respected you, effectively were just inspired by what you do, and they were listening right now, what would be something you would tell them?
Don't give up and trust. If you find a recruiter that you can absolutely trust, I would work with them because 9 times out of 10, they are there to help you.
Awesome. I like that. Inspiring and short. So I like to wrap up the podcast episode usually with what I like to call the story time aspect of it, where we give one horror story. So this would be a horror story experience that you have had as a recruiter based on like a candidate or something like that. And then following it up, ending with like a good note and a good story that you've had placing somebody or, whatever experience that you've had.
Horror story. Wow. A few horror stories, but I can think of one that just happened. I found what I thought was the perfect candidate, called the person, 1-word answers. To me, that's a horror story. If you can't get the information out of the candidate, and he sounded like he was half of a bottle in, maybe more, and literally gave me 1-word answers. I could not get him to talk. And I even asked, I can call back at a later time if that's okay. Still wanted to talk, but gave me 1-word answers.
Wow.
It was awful. It was absolutely terrible. And it was uncomfortable too.
And this was like an IT programmer?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe he's just not used to talking to women.
I don't know. Am I intimidating? I don't feel like I sound intimidating.
Not to me, but you're talking to the wrong person. I run a podcast, so I talk to people.
This is true.
I'm just trying to give this guy the benefit of a doubt, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that's just, I've never given anybody a 1-word answer in my life. Yeah, that does suck. That would be a nightmare. Not in the way that, other people would normally think of it, but I agree with that. So
I couldn't get him off the phone.
That's just so strange, though.
It was very strange.
Why would you make a phone call and then not talk? I hate when people do that anyway. So that's not even recruiting related. My mother used to do that to me all the time. When we first got phones, I'd call her. She wouldn't answer the phone, and she'd text me what after I called her. And it's like, if you would have picked up the phone, you would have known what I wanted, Mom. That's the whole point of the phone call. I can't, so it's just some people just phones are not their thing, I guess. What can I say?
Agreed.
So, yeah, well, I like that. That's a short and sweet horror story to the point. What about something cool? What about something uplifting or a candidate that really, ended on a good note?
There are a handful of candidates that have stuck by my side. I've not been able to place them at various jobs for various reasons. A lot of them, something fell through with the company or the position, but they've stuck by my side and they trust me. They're willing to work with me. And there's a handful of those, and I really sincerely appreciate them.
You just haven't really been successful in placing them, but you would recommend them to other people if possible, and really just keep them in your inner network as like first recommendations?
Absolutely. If I can't help them, then I will find somebody that can place them somewhere else. That's really cool. And that's usually not something that you hear a recruiter saying. They don't have people on backup. To be able to have a recruiter say, hey, no, these are good people. I haven't found a good fit. And that happens. Right. As a recruiter, you're going to have more candidates available than you do jobs. Right. And it's like, who do I pick? Right. And I'm not just going to place candidates anywhere. I'm going to make sure it's the right fit. That, I think, is going to be our good, awesome story. Erin, I do appreciate you being on the podcast with us. You can find Erin on LinkedIn or through her website at erinstollmusic.com. That's ERINSTOLL music.com. Erin, I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate your time and being on the podcast, and thanks a lot. Thank you so much. This was great. Bonus. Anyone who is listening to the podcast and is interested or in need of a position or IT help or placement that Erin is available for with iFuse Solutions, we've actually set up a special raffle of sorts for listeners of the podcast. So here's how it works. You connect with Erin on LinkedIn, letting her know that you've heard our podcast together.
Also, look for Mike Tech Studios on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. If you haven't subscribed or followed or shared our content recently, feel free to do that too. Using the hashtag #TheSingingRecruiter, send us at Mike Tech Studios a screenshot of this podcast and your horror or success story with a recruiter. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a great prize directly from Erin. 2 random winners will receive her latest album as a download code from iTunes. 2 random winners will receive an autograph signed by Erin herself, along with a download code for 1 song off of her latest album. And an even luckier winner as a grand prize of sorts will get both an autograph as well as Erin's latest album, Unfinished. Have your own recruiter candidate story that you want to share with us? If you're listening on YouTube, comment below. If you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, or your podcast app of choice, feel free to email your experience to go@miketech.tv. You can also find our full conversation of this episode on YouTube at youtube.com/Mike Tech Studios. That's MIKTEK Studios. Thanks for checking out this episode, and feel free to like, subscribe, and share our content. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is Michael Midnight signing off.